Now, one of the more fascinating debates, I suppose, in the world of intelligence testing, how we talk about people that are intelligent, is really trying to break down exactly what is this thing we refer to intelligence. And there has been a variety of debates going on around this particular issue. One of the first people that really waded in to do a variety of research in this area is a guy by the name of Charles Spearman. Whoops. I gotta spell his name right here. I was on the right track. I was getting distracted. So Charles Spearman, and he has had a huge impact on how we think about intelligence in general. And essentially what he believed is that we really just have a general intelligence that he referred to as G. And it can be broken down into a variety of other things, but G itself is the one that is part of the overall element. And he went through what we call factor analysis to actually identify several different clusters of mental abilities. And what he found is that there was one that really impacted all of them, and that's how he arrived at this idea of G, or general intelligence. Since that time, there's been a tendency to want to try to expand some of his concepts when we talk about intelligence, because it just doesn't seem to match with everyday experience when we talk about intelligence itself. And one of the people that challenged him was really a guy, Thurstone is the guy's name, and his contention was, and this just takes you for a short walk down through history when we talk about intelligence, but he suggested that there are primary mental abilities rather than one single one that fall out in terms of verbal intelligence, and nonverbal intelligence would be an easy way to think about it. But he rejected the notion that there was only one single uniform way of looking at it. And you see people that score well in one area seem to score well in a lot of areas. And one of the other people that fall in is Kanazawa. It's kind of fun name to pronounce. But he pointed basically at problem solving as, or solving, I should say, novel problems, not ones that everybody solves, but novel problems as one way of measuring intelligence. And there's a lot of validity behind what he's talking about in that regard. But for the longest time, Spearman has really held sway in intelligence conversations and debates. And so one of the key people, so Spearman is one, and Thurstone is another, but another key person that really has been part of this debate is a guy by the name of Howard Gardner. And after looking at savants, which essentially means that one area of the person's brain has been diminished, but not others, and this, I'm going to include a video of this particular guy who basically recreated an entire panoramic view of Rome from a helicopter, just I think a 10-minute helicopter ride. And it's fascinating to watch the video as to how he produced it. But what Gardner basically is suggesting is that we have multiple intelligences, which means that if one is affected, the others will not be. And so Gardner is basically suggesting that you have people who have incredible capacities in one area but not in others. And so there's not really the notion of an intelligence as much as multiple ones, and you see 8 different areas, 8 areas of intelligence that Gardner talks about, including kinesthetic and bodily kinesthetic. We just finished watching the Olympics, and gymnasts. Some of the basketball players certainly would fall in this category. Spatial abilities, logical, mathematical, intrapersonal, interpersonal. All of those are various kinds of intelligences that Gardner was suggesting were part of it. Another key theorist in this was a guy by the name of Robert Sternberg, and he agrees with Gardner in the sense that there are multiple intelligences, but his theory is referred to as the triarchic theory of intelligence. Triarchic, let me write this out, theory of intelligence. And he, as the name suggests, is saying that there really is a triad of intelligences that captures all of what people will experience. So you have analytical, you have creative, and then so analytical, creative, and then also you have the idea of practical intelligence. And like I said, the key similarities between Sternberg and Gardner is the idea of multiple intelligence, not a single intelligence like Spearman was suggesting. And these have been gaining a lot of ground in our understanding of intelligence in general. And I will just review a few of these as we get to the end. And if you want to follow along or you want to make a table, this is one way to study this particular area, is comparing the different theories of intelligence from Spearman to Thurston to Gardner to Sternberg, and we'll look at each at the end of this particular video series.
Stephen Wiltshire from London is a star among savants. His nickname is the Living Camera. Stephen is autistic. He lives in a world of his own. Communication is difficult for him. He didn't speak his first words, pencil and paper, until he was 5. Yet when he was 11, he drew a perfect aerial view of London after only one helicopter ride. Even the number of windows in all the major buildings in his drawing was correct. For this film, we're testing the living camera in Rome. Stephen has never seen the Eternal City from above before. After only a 45-minute helicopter flight, we'll ask him to draw a 5.5-yard panoramic picture of the historic city centre. Without having a second glance at it, Stephen has 3 days. In these 3 days, Stephen will have to keep thousands of details in his head. The innumerable cupolas, the tiny winding streets, all the balconies and windows of the endless array of houses, and each and every column and window arch of Rome's major sites, from the Pantheon to St. Peter's to the Colosseum. Five and a half yards of paper can look scarily empty. The amazing thing, Stephen starts the drawing as we would, with the Church of St. Peter's. But he doesn't do any sketches, nor roughing out of the space for the drawing. It's as if the panorama already existed within his head, with all the proportions, all the roads, all the details. At the end of the second day, Stephen is a good halfway through his creation. After 3 days of his drawing marathon, even Stephen Wiltshire starts to tire. He has filled in more than 5 yards of paper in fine pencil. He has been restlessly aligning window to window and house to house, because Stephen loves to be applauded for his art. In the left corner, he's finally reached the ruins of the Forum Romanum. Stephen's sister Annette is rejoicing with him. He's made it. Obviously, he's pleased with his work. Yet our vexing question still remains. How precise was Stephen's ability to memorize? Is it really true that you could only see a single curve of the Tiber from above? We started to compare the accuracy of the drawing with the real thing. Is Stephen's version of St. Peter's cupola too dominant? Yet here again, like with the curve of the Tiber, Stephen is frighteningly right. We wondered if the famous Roman hills should probably stand out more in Stephen's panorama. But again, Stephen had seen it better. From 1,000 feet up, the hills are, optically, almost level. Checking the Pantheon, we did discover some minor inaccuracies on the roof. But the number of columns of the portal is, again, absolutely correct. And, despite our doubts, Stephen has drawn one of the most complex buildings, the Colosseum, so precisely, it's practically a blueprint of reality. Stephen was also accurate in the instances we checked of nameless buildings and side streets. Had he had more time, his sister Annette believes, he would have put in even more detail.
Some of the areas of all of that part, lots of detailed, remembered things and of some of the cities and the neighborhoods and the villages. And then the easy part is St. Peter's and Forum and Colosseum, and memorize it by head and by memory.